My name is Emily Parkour. I am 29 years old. And by the time my father's hand struck my face in the middle of my office, I already knew he had been waiting all day to do it. The sound wasn't loud. That's what I remember most. Not the impact. Not the sting, but how contained it was. Like the room swallowed it. The lobby of my company was full clients, employees. A few extended family members who had insisted on coming because my father had told them it was just a small celebration. Soft instrumental music played in the background. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed near the reception desk, and then silence. It didn't arrive all at once. It spread slowly, unevenly, like people were realizing one by one that something had just gone very wrong. I didn't touch my face. That surprised me. Most people would, but I didn't. I just stood there, still holding the folder in my hands, my head turned slightly from the force, my hair falling forward like a curtain, and I breathed, once, twice, then straightened. My father was already speaking. "Don't disrespect me in public," he snapped, his voice low but sharp enough to carry. "I don't care where we are. Where we are." I almost smiled, because that was the problem. He had no idea. The receptionist, Nadea, was frozen behind the desk. One of my senior managers had taken a step forward, then stopped, unsure if this was a private matter or something else entirely. My employees were looking at me, not at him. At me, waiting. And in that moment, something inside me settled into place. Not anger, not even hurt. Clarity. I adjusted the folder in my hand and looked at him directly. "You're right," I said calmly. "You don't care where you are." A ripple of confusion moved through the room. He frowned. "What is that supposed to mean?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step back. "This is my office," I said. The words didn't land all at once. They took a second, maybe two. Then they spread like the silence had. Earlier, except this time. It was sharper. My father blinked. "What?" I turned slightly, gesturing around us, not dramatically, just enough. "This building," I said, "this company, this team, it belongs to me." Someone near the back whispered, "Wait, what?" My father laughed. Not because it was funny, because he thought it had to be. "Oh, come on," he said, shaking his head. "Don't start with this nonsense." I opened the folder, slowly, deliberately, double quotes, "Before I explain why you just hit your daughter in front of her own employees," said, "tell me something." I looked past him, directly into the faces watching us. Where are you watching from? It hadn't started today. It never does. Moments like this don't come out of nowhere. They are built, layer by layer, quietly, over years. The first time my father used me financially, I was 21. He didn't ask, not really. He presented it like a fact. "Your uncle's business is in trouble," he had said over dinner, cutting his food like the conversation wasn't heavy. "We need to help." I remember that word because it always meant me. "I don't have that kind of money." I had replied carefully. He didn't look up. "You will," he said. "You smart. You'll figure it out." And I did. I worked 2 jobs that year. Cut. My expenses down to nothing. Lived in a studio apartment that barely had enough space for a bed and a desk, and I sent the money not because I wanted to, because I thought I was supposed to, because I thought that's what being a good daughter looked like, because every time I hesitated, he would say the same thing. "Family takes care of family." What he meant was, "You take care of us." Back in the lobby, the air had shifted completely. No one was pretending anymore. No fake smiles, no polite laughter, just attention. Focused, uncomfortable, real. My father's expression hardened. "Emily," he said, his tone warning now, "you're embarrassing yourself." I nodded slightly. "You made it public when you used me as a punchline." That line didn't just land, it stayed. You could feel it in the room. He glanced around, suddenly aware of the eyes on him. "This is ridiculous," he scoffed. "You think owning some office makes you what? Important. I tilted my head. No, I said. But it does mean you don't get to hit me here and pretend it's nothing. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone near the reception desk whispered, "Did he really just yes?" I said, without looking at them. He did. There's something people misunderstand about quiet people. They think silence means weakness. They think restraint means fear. But silence is often a decision. And when that decision changes, everything does. I placed the folder on the glass table beside us, opened. Inside were documents I had never intended to show anyone. Not because they weren't important, but because I had spent years protecting the people they implicated. My father crossed his arms. "This is pathetic," he muttered. "You're going to pull out papers now?" "In front of everyone, I am," I said simply. I took out the first sheet, held it up. "This is a bank transfer from me to you," I said. 3 years ago. "For your business?" He rolled his eyes. "So what? Parents help their children all the time. This one goes the other way," I said. A small, sharp silence. I placed it down, took out another, and this is the second transfer. 6 months later, another page, and this is the third. "The one you told everyone came from a private investor." He shifted just slightly, but I saw it because I had spent years watching him, learning his tells. "You're twisting things," snapped. "You offered that money?" "I did," I agreed, "because you told me the business would collapse without it." I looked at him directly, double quotes, "and because you said you'd pay me back." I flipped another page. "These are the repayment records," I said. "Notice anything missing?" He didn't answer, because there was nothing to say. A voice from the side one of my clients spoke up. "Wait, are you saying he never paid you back?" I didn't look at them. "Yes." My father laughed again. But this time, it cracked double quotes. "Oh, come on," he said, louder now. "You're acting like this is some kind of crime. It's family." I nodded slowly. "Exactly." That word hung in the air, heavy, complicated, for years. Family had been the excuse, the shield, the reason I stayed quiet, the reason kept giving, the reason I kept absorbing things that should have never been mine to carry. Because if I didn't, who would? That's what I used to think. Now I understood something different. If I didn't, maybe they would finally have to. "I did not embarrass you," I said calmly. "I corrected the story." One of my employees, Daniel, stepped forward slightly. "Emily," he said carefully, "do you want us to clear the room?" I shook my head. "No." My father scoffed. "Of course she doesn't," he muttered. "She loves the attention." I looked at him, really looked, for the first time without filtering it through obligation or guilt. "I am not asking for attention." I said, "I am asking for accuracy." The room had fully turned now. No one was laughing. No, one was pretending. They were watching a story rewrite itself in real time. And my father. He could feel it, that loss of control, that shift in power. It unsettled him because control had always been his strongest currency. And today, he was spending it too fast. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded. His voice wasn't charming anymore. It was sharp, defensive. Almost desperate. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence sit, let it stretch, because for once, I wasn't rushing to make things easier than I said, because I stopped funding my own. Humiliation? That was the moment everything changed. Not because of the documents, not because of the slap, but because I said it out loud without softening it, without apologizing. There's a specific kind of pain that comes from realizing you were never seen clearly, not misunderstood, not overlooked, but conveniently misrepresented. I wasn't the emotional one. I wasn't the dramatic one. I was the one who kept everything running, and because I did it quietly, they assumed it didn't cost me anything. My father shook his head. "You're unbelievable," he said. "After everything I've done for you, you did the lying." I interrupted softly. I only stopped editing. That line didn't just shift the room, it broke something. Not visibly, but structurally, because once the truth, said clearly enough, it can't be unheard. Somewhere behind me, I heard my aunt whisper, "Is this true?" Another voice, my cousin, murmured, "I didn't know." Of course they didn't, because I made sure they didn't. For years, I took a slow breath, then added, "Quieter now." Some families don't divide love by fairness. They divide it by who creates the most noise. No one interrupted because they were listening now, not to respond, but to understand. I looked around the room at the people who had seen me as composed, reliable, steady, and for the first time, they were seeing the cost of that steadiness. I wasn't ending a fight today, I said. I was ending a role. My father didn't speak. Not immediately, because for once, he didn't have the next line, and standing there in the middle of the office I had built from nothing, I realized something I should have understood years ago. Being dependable does not mean being invisible. And silence. Silence is not loyalty. It's just delayed truth. He didn't speak right away. That alone told me everything. My father had always had something to say. A joke, a deflection, a louder voice to override the moment. Silence had never been his language, but now it was the only thing left. He looked around the room again, but this time not like he owned it, like he was trying to measure how much of it he had already lost. "You're overreacting," he said finally, but the words came out thinner than he intended. It was a slap. Parents discipline their children. There it was, the reframing, the smallest possible version of the biggest possible boundary. I didn't flinch. I'm not a child. I said, "And this isn't your house." A pause. Not dramatic. Not explosive. But final. One of the clients near the front, Mr. Iqbal, someone I had been negotiating with for months, cleared his throat. "Emily," he said carefully, "should we step out?" I shook my head again. "No," I said. "If anyone should leave, it's not the people who came here to respect this space." That word again, respect, my father scoffed under his breath. "You think you deserve respect because you make money." He said, "You've forgotten who you are." I looked at him. "No," I replied. "I've remembered. There's a certain kind of clarity that doesn't come from thinking, it comes from finally being tired enough. Tired of explaining, tired of minimizing, tired of making other people comfortable with your discomfort. I had spent years negotiating my own dignity, down to something everyone else could afford, today. I stopped offering discounts. "I'm going to make something very simple," I said. My voice even, my posture relaxed. I pulled out another document. "This is the lease for this building," I said. "My name is on it." Another page. "These are the company registration documents." Another. "And these are the payroll records for every employee standing here." Place them down. One by one, no rush, no drama, just sequence. "This is not a place you get to control," I said. "And I am not a person you get to correct publicly to feel powerful." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it. Again. "You're being disrespectful," he snapped. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. "Respect isn't something you demand after crossing a line," I said. "It's something you lose when you pretend the line doesn't exist." Behind him, I noticed something small. My cousin Adil, who had laughed earlier, was no longer looking at me. He was looking at my father, and not with admiration, with something else. Something closer to doubt. That was new, and my father saw it too. You could tell by the way his shoulders tightened. Because for people like him, the audience is everything. And the audience was shifting. "Everyone here knows me," he said loudly, trying to pull the room back. "They know what kind of father I am." No one responded, not immediately. Then, quietly, Sarah spoke. Actually, she said, hesitant but firm, "We don't." That landed harder than anything I had said because it wasn't confrontation. It was absence. The absence of his narrative. And he didn't know how to fill it. I exhaled slowly. This isn't about proving you're a bad father, I said. It's about correcting the idea that I'm a weak daughter. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The music in the background had stopped at some point. I didn't even remember when. All that was left was the low hum of the building, and the weight of everything unsaid finally being said. He stepped closer to me, too close. His voice dropped. "You're going to regret this," he said quietly. I met his gaze. "No," I said. "I already regret how long I waited." That was the moment he lost it. Not loudly, not physically, but structurally, because threats only work when the other person is still afraid, and I wasn't. "Get your things," he muttered, turning slightly as if speaking to my aunt and cousin. "We're leaving." No one moved. He looked back at them. "Did you hear me?" My aunt hesitated. I think we should stay," she said carefully. That was the first crack. Small, but irreversible. My father stared at her. "You're choosing this." He asked. She didn't answer. But she didn't leave. And that was enough. I watched it happen. The slow, uncomfortable unraveling of a system that had been held together by silence and assumption. No one declared anything. No one made speeches. They just stopped following. "I think it's best if you leave," I said calmly. He turned back to me, stunned. "You're kicking me out?" "Yes," he laughed again. But it didn't carry. "You can't kick me out," he said. "I'm your father, and this is my office." The two truths stood next to each other. Only one of them had authority here. For a second, I thought he might argue, push further. Escalate, but then he looked around one last time, and what he saw wasn't his audience anymore. It was mine. Without another word, he grabbed his jacket, turned. And walked out. The glass doors slid open automatically. And closed behind him. Quietly. No one clapped. This wasn't that kind of moment. There was no victory music, no relief that came instantly, just a shift, a deep structural shift. I stood there for a second longer than necessary, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I was feeling something unfamiliar. Not anger, not sadness, something lighter, something unburdened. "Emily," Sarah said softly. I turned. "Yes. Are you okay?" I considered the question, not automatically, not out of habit, actually considered it. Then I nodded. Double quotes, yes. I said, "I am." And for the first time in a long time, that answer was true. We didn't resume the celebration. That wouldn't have made sense. Instead, I thanked everyone for coming, spoke to a few clients, privately assured my team that everything was under control, because it was. For the first time, it really was. By the time the building emptied, the sky outside had finally decided it was raining, not heavily, just enough to make the pavement, reflect the city lights in soft, blurred lines. I stood by the window in my office that still felt new, in a way I couldn't explain. There was a knock. Soft. I didn't turn. "Come in." The door opened. Slowly, it was my mother. She hadn't said a word. During the entire scene, hadn't stepped in, hadn't left. She had just watched. Now she stood behind me, hesitant. "I didn't know," she said. I turned slightly. "You did," I replied gently, "just not in ways you wanted to acknowledge." She flinched. "Not dramatically. Just enough." "I thought it wasn't that serious," she said. "You never complained." I nodded. "I did," I said, "just not loudly." She looked down at her hands. "That's not fair," she whispered. "No," I agreed. "It isn't." There's a specific kind of pain that comes from conversations like this. Not explosive, not angry, just late, too late to fix what already shaped you, but not too late to understand it. "Why didn't you tell me everything?" she asked. I took a breath because this answer mattered. "I did," I said, "just not in ways you respected." She closed her eyes briefly, and in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not denial, not defense, but recognition. "I thought you were strong," she said. "I am," I replied. "But strength isn't the absence of impact." She sat down slowly in the chair across from my desk. "I didn't realize how much you were carrying," she said. I nodded. "That's because I carried it quietly." Silence again. But this time, it wasn't heavy, it was reflective. "I don't know how to fix this," she admitted. I looked at her. "You don't?" I said. "Not all of it." She nodded slowly. "Then what do I do?" That question. That was new. Because for the first time, she wasn't asking how to smooth things over. She was asking how to face them. "You listen," I said, "and you stop pretending things are fine when they're not." She swallowed. "I can do that." I believed her. Not completely, but enough. "And I'm setting boundaries," I added. She looked up. "I know. No more money," I said. "No more stepping in when things fall apart. No more being the solution to problems I didn't create." She nodded again. "That's fair. And no more jokes," I added quietly. "Not from him. Not from anyone." Her voice softened. "That's more than fair." I walked to the window again, watched the rain, listened to the quiet. "I still love you," she said after a moment. I didn't turn. "I know. And him." I paused. Longer this time, then said, "I don't know what to do with that yet." That was the truth. Not clean, not simple, but real. Because walking away from a role is one thing. Figuring out what replaces it, that takes time. I finally turned back to her. "But I do know this," I said. "I'm not sacrificing myself to keep things comfortable anymore." She stood slowly, walked toward the door, then stopped. "Emily." "Yes, I'm proud of you." I held her gaze. And for the first time, that didn't feel like something I had to earn after she left. I sat down at my desk, the same desk I had worked at late nights, early mornings, weekends, that the same desk, where I had built something from nothing. Not because anyone handed it to me, but because I refused to stay where I was being diminished. I opened my laptop, looked at the screen. At the numbers. The emails. The work. And I realized something quietly but completely. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not to him, not to them, not even to myself. I'd already done it. So let me ask you something. If the people closest to you only saw your value when it benefited them, would you keep giving until there was nothing left? Or would you finally stop and choose yourself?